All right, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us this good morning for What's Up Downtown Life in the Village. My name is Terrence Miller. I am a city employee. My background is architecture, landscape architecture, and I am the author and creator of the Fabric of Our Community brochure that you all have today. I'm gonna jump right into it. We have a lovely host of panelists today. Our first panelist is Walter Hawkins. As Director of Urban Development, Walter plays a role for the Mayor's Pathways for Parramore initiative. Additionally, he is the management liaison to the Downtown Clean Team and Discover Downtown Operations. He also serves as the DDB CRA Advisory Board Representative to the Downtown Facade Committee, the Women Minority Entrepreneur Business Assistance Program, and Architectural Review Board. Walter is a graduate of Savannah State University and received his master's degree at St. Thomas University in Miami. Up next, we have Dr. Kathleen "Kat" Gordon, a retired school board member and educator of 51 years, world traveler, librarian, businesswoman, member and director of several esteemed boards, as well as a recipient of numerous accolades and awards regarding her social accomplishments and in education. Dr. Kathleen Gordon is a panel member of great distinction. Dr. Gordon received her bachelor's degree in library science from South Carolina State University, her master's degree in guidance and counseling and certification in administration and supervision from the University of Central Florida, certification in library science and counseling from Florida State University at Duquesne University, and her Doctor of Philosophy in Education with a specialization in organizational leadership. Dr. Gordon is a former award-winning educator, both on Orange and Osceola counties, as well as a former librarian and New Beginnings Educational Center. Up next, we have Reverend Dr. Robert Spooning. Prior to being ordained, Dr. Spooning served in regional and national management positions with Bell South Business Systems, now AT&T. Dr. Spooning was ordained over 26 years ago. Dr. Reverend Spooning is an exemplary pastor, preacher, teacher, and social activist in Orlando. And if you haven't noticed this morning, we are in his church, which is the oldest African-American church in Orlando. Dr. Spooning is a graduate of Florida Agriculture and Mechanical University, Lagos Bible College, Slidell Baptist Theological Seminary, and Summer Leadership Institute at Harvard Divinity School. He finally prescribed numerous projects and extensions from varied entities, such as participating on local boards and influence, such as the Board of Directors for Career Source Central Florida, or the President's Multicultural Advisory Council at the University of Central Florida, among others. As a presence with the Community for Spiritual Guidance, Dr. Spooning believes in the creed, "We are one, our cause is one, and if we are to be successful, we must help one another." He is also currently chairman of the Parramore Community Engagement Council. And thank you, everyone. These are our panelists, and I'm gonna jump right in, give everyone a round of applause for our outstanding panelists. I'm gonna jump right into the questions. So up first is Dr. Gordon. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the importance of education in the Black community?
That is a great question, Terrence. I would rate it a 10 plus. The reason why I would rate it a 10 plus, because without education, our children will not be able to make it. Without education, Walter would not have made it out of this community. I would not have made it out of Charleston, South Carolina, and no, would Dr. Spooney have made it? Even though Dr. Spooney is a former educator with me in Kissimmee at one of our major discipline schools. And he will let you know how important it was for Judge Belvin Perry to send our students from Orange and Osceola County to the non-traditional court. And we were fostered to teach those children for many, many years. But as you heard, Dr. Spooney left us because he knew education was important. He kept moving forward. I stayed and I worked with my students and moved them forward. And most of those students that were assigned to us, and the reason why I get a 10+, because if we had not educated those students in Orange and Osceola County, they would not be what they are today.
Thank you, and I would add, because of trailblazers like yourself, I wouldn't be able to be here today.
That's right,
as well.
that's true.
And so thank you guys for your commitment and your dedication to education. So Dr. Reverend Spooney, I'm gonna ask you this. What was the role of the Black church during segregation and leading into integration?
In a nutshell, and again, that's a great question. In a nutshell, the Black church was actually the epicenter of Black life during Jim Crow and segregation. Unfortunately, we are a country. We got the unpleasant history of slavery and a culture that finds identity based on class and race. It existed then and it exists now. Though primarily places of worship, churches, Black churches in particular, during Jim Crow segregation and even during the civil rights movement, what they did was that they offered services such as job training programs, insurance cooperatives. Churches even served as schools during these areas. As a matter of fact, Mount Zion Missionary Baptist Institutional Church is a prime example. The name institutional indicates that it was a church that was a center of learning. And if you knew the history of Orlando, at one time, Jones High was even lodged in the facility before it actually moved to be start being built. And basically, many of the pastors doing segregation and during the civil rights movement, they really advocated for racial equality. In addition, most people don't realize it, but Black churches also served as day school, daycare centers, and nurseries, and offered all types of services for young people. My first venture to the Boy Scouts was through this church and the Boy Scout troop that was at this church. If they had not been here, I wouldn't have been a Boy Scout. Didn't make Eagle Scout, but I was a Boy Scout. All right. So when we look back over history, we'll see that the Black church served not only as an umbrella for this community, but also the umbrella for organizations like SCLC and CORE and SNCC, as they used to call it, which is the non-student violent coordinating committee. All of those actually were birthed, even though they were separate, they were birthed in the church by the leaders back then. And so, again, the church played a very pivotal role in the Black community. But as they say on Facebook, it was complicated.
Right. Thank you for that, Reverend Dr. Spooney. I'm gonna hop over to Mr. Hawkins. And in your bio, I mentioned you were a part of the Pathways to Parramore. Can you explain a little bit about that initiative?
And good morning to everyone. Just want to share a little, as Pastor Spooney talked about the church. That was one of the things that kept me out of trouble, because I went to Vacation Bible School and a number of other things that were very important in this community. Just kind of reflecting on the Pathways for Parramore. This is an initiative that Mayor Dyer put in place when he took office in 2003 as a way of making a commitment to our community. He made two commitments. One was to our downtown, and as well as making a commitment to our Parramore community. And based on that, there were 5 elements that came out of that, the Pathways for Parramore. And those elements, the mayor did not want to have another so-called plan, because when people look at Parramore, we have studied Parramore 50 million times. And so what he wanted to do is say, we need an implementation initiative. This was the Pathways for Parramore initiative to look at what are the things that's most important to the community that we can go and have a step-by-step process to going forward. One, we want to focus in one of the pathways for housing. As you look at the housing community today in Parramore, you have a combination of some that are substandard housing. You have some that was, challenging housing. And what we wanted to do is how do we improve on the housing stock in the community? The next part of it was looking at education, children in education. And I know our school board member, Kat Gordon, going to talk a little about it, but the emphasis was on making sure that we have quality education because the kids, as she shared with me earlier, were being bused to 9 schools outside of the neighborhood. You can't have a community solid when you have that kind of capacity going in and out of the community. So that was part of that was the second part. Another part was looking at economic development. Growing up as a kid in Parramore, one of the main thoroughfares in Parramore, West Church Street and Parramore Avenue, had tons of businesses that were operational all the time. But just through the years, those numbers got lower and lower. So we want to look at how do we do business development and quality of life. The next part was looking at quality for infrastructure. And that was improving the lighting capacity of the community. We want to see a community lit up, as people travel through. You want to have nice roads. At one point, there were dirt roads. So we want to do, how do we challenge ourselves with that, and going forward. So we wanted to make sure all of those things were in place and supporting the efforts. And then the final one is, again, looking at the quality of infrastructure in our community and making sure that we have compliance to garbage control, because sometimes if you drive through Parramore, you see a lot of dumping. You see a lot of just people just like not taking particular concerns about it. So we wanted to look at it holistically from that. Again, it was an implementation plan. So I'll talk a little about later what those plans are and then talking about what things are in place going forward.
Thank you, Walter. And I think everyone can see today that a lot of those initiatives are in place today, and Parramore is a rising community. I'm going to open this question up to any of the 3 panelists. What are some of the challenges in the Parramore community today?
I guess I could start with that. As any neighborhood has dealt with the cycle of economic movement, Parramore faces a number of dealing with the unemployment issue, dealing with the homelessness issue, dealing with the issue of eliminating the digital divide, things of that sort. Health is important. One of the issues that I've been able to find, and actually my church, we actually did a program, but we actually determined that obesity in young people, teenagers, far outnumbered in Parramore any of the other districts in the city of Orlando. In other words, the rate of obese young people needed to be dealt with. Obesity, as we know, leads to other health issues, high blood pressure, diabetes, et cetera, et cetera. So we addressed that by, one of the ways we addressed that really was, we had a class where we taught individuals to cook decent food from fast food or convenience stores, because probably the major issue is one of the most important issues, I would think, is the fact that this area is also a food desert. There is no public index, etc. And so many people go to the little corner convenience store to get goods, etc. And so I think those are some of the challenges. And then there's always the challenge of getting people's mindset to accept change, and then getting people's mindset to understand what type of change needs to be done. So there's a plethora of issues, if you will. They occur not only in Parramore, but I would imagine in any other community that's is trying to revitalize itself in America. Now, that's just what I think, but I'm just preaching. I'm just preaching.
Yes, I can help with that also. My issue would be the education standpoint. That was the biggest issue for us. For two superintendents that I had the opportunity to work with, Ronald Blocker, and to work with Dr. Barbara Jenkins, and to have a role with both of them in their entire tenure. I do want to say that the biggest challenge here, and Walter and Mayor Badidaya's staff has really worked with us just to get us to this point. We are not there yet. Number one, we have to find business partners that want to work with us in a community of this sort. My other community, well, I can't say mine anymore, but the former person that is sitting on in District 5, they don't know how powerful District 5 is. And I don't mean District 5 for the city, I'm talking about District 5 for the school board. It encompasses all the way from Pine Hills, from Evans High School, all the way to Mr. Rosen Shingle Creek, and half of International Drive and the Millennium Mall. You have so many awesome business partners that we could not have made it this far. And Parramore challenge was just so different for us. Number one, to try to get a school in the community that would encompass it all. That these children would not have to leave, as Walter said, from one school to another school to go to middle school and then high school. We were able to get that done. Thank God for a great board and leadership of the superintendents. We were able to get the kindergarten through 8th grade, which was extremely tough task to do, working with the state of Florida and the governor of Florida that do not want to give money, but the people of Orlando stood up and they built that school. The sale tax, the referendum money is keeping that school alive. Number one, the challenge was, parents, getting teachers that want to go. A lot of people don't want to teach Black children, and God knows they don't want to teach bad Black children. Okay, you see Reverend Spooney left me at New Beginnings. I love Reverend Spooney, didn't y'all? I'm cutting the food with them because I love to teach. We have a long life up here, okay? I met these gentlemen back in 1968, so that tells us something, okay? But I mean, Reverend Spooney was a teacher. We taught behavior children. Everybody cannot do that if that is not your calling. That is what the challenge is right now, even with the Orange County Public School Center of Academics. We call it ACE, the Academic Center of Excellence, okay, and for excellence, because we want those children to achieve. So getting the business partners was a challenge, but the business partners that stepped up, every single one of them, UCF was first. And I always like to let everybody know, it was a letter written to President Hitt, but the person that I love the most is the person that asked us as board members, all 7 of us at that time, what were our goals? And we laid them out, and I will share those with you later. But then the Boys and Girls Club stepped in. Valencia stepped in. Dr. Felicia just came right on in. Mr. Rosen gave me a hard time because I was already working with him for Mabel Butler, helping Tangelo to try to get Tangelo's school a new building. We were able to do that. But Mr. Rosen, we said, but look at the YMCA. It's not what it should be in this community, still isn't. And I think it's changing now to the Boys and Girls Club. The Boys and Girls Club stepped in for the ACE school, okay? Then Mr. Rosen said, I'm not gonna really help until you all get me the babies. But we can't get you the babies because guess what? The state won't pay for the 2, that's the challenge. The babies must be educated in this community. The importance of education is to educate those babies. Mr. Rosen did that in Tangelo, but he made a mandate to us that he wasn't coming on board until we could find a way to get the 2- and 3-year-olds. Well, that was a big mess right there. So I go to Walter And we did everything that we could as a challenge to get. Then people started stepping forward. Dr. German said, well, if you could get all that and you're training from the cradle all the way up to middle school, I will give degrees. A doctor, we'll start the funds right now for any student in Parramore that want to earn a doctor's degree. That was the challenge. These kids now have been put in place. Then Bakari came in along with several other medical areas to say we can do the health part and the medical part, because kids got to be taken care of. They just can't keep getting on 9 different buses or 10 different buses and going into somebody else's community if they wanted to stay. We're not making anybody just stay if they want to. It's a choice. It's choice to be there. But we made it that if you're in Parramore, we will educate you. And Mr. Rosen took that upon himself. UCF took it upon themselves. Valencia took it upon themselves. And so many organizations that Elizabeth couldn't be here with us today that was going to share and tell you what we did. So what I'm saying, the challenge is getting a good principal. That's a major challenge. Getting a good principal that wants to be there. We've already had 3. And I'm not saying that in a bad way because people want to move on. Why? Because it's tough. Teachers have left, but teachers have come. It's tough. You have to find people like Dr. Spoonie and myself who want to dedicate ourselves and work with children that don't quite look like they're going to behave, but you never know what they're going to be. They might end up being a Jeff Reddy. Jeff was with us at Orange Center Elementary, and look where Jeff is now. Okay, so that my thing right now, the challenge for Parramore is education and housing. Education and housing.
Thank you, Dr. Gordon. You touched a lot on education, so I'm gonna ask you this. What changes have you seen in education in the Black community as an educator and elected official?
That's a great question. The changes that I see is when you have Black administrators in place with power. And the person for me was Ron Blocker. Ron Blocker called me in and asked me, okay, you just got elected to the school board, what do you want to do? I said, I want to build a school in Parramore. And he laughed. He laughed. And he said, well, it'll be a cold day. I did not say the word. And I said, but that's what I want to do. So he laughed. He called in the other board member. They said what they wanted to do. He called in all 7 of us. And we said what we wanted. He said, well, I'm going to do whatever I can to help you do it. And then Mr. Blocker decided to retire. And I'm going, wait a minute, now you're leaving. And he told me, you better strike while the iron is hot because I'm moving on. And we hit that gavel on the table to build a school in Parramore. And when we did do it, it was a cold day.
Well, it sounds like it was an experience, but you've triumphed over it, and you can see the fruit of your labor today.
It was cold. It was cold. That groundbreaking, yeah.
Couldn't even put the shovel in the ground. Was that cool?
You touched a lot about education. I'm going to open this question up to Reverend Dr. Spoonie and Walter. As far as the community, how have you seen things change over the years?
Just kind of touching base on the education and the challenges we have in the community before I get into the educational piece, and that is growing up as a kid in Parramore, we had a population over 20,000 residents in the neighborhood and the community, and just through the years, that number has around 5,000 population. So that creates a challenge when you're talking about redeveloping and doing some wonderful things in the community. You got to have capacity. Stores like a Publix or any one of the major stores are not coming into a community when you have low population based on that. They're looking at rooftops, they're looking at income. So those are the things that's important. So those are the things that we are working on to try to involve that. So that's why you have what we call Creative Village that's in place today, with the operation of
of having Valencia Community College, University of Central Florida, and the condominiums and townhomes that we have in the community. That's building the capacity in the community. But we'll also have housing initiatives that we have on. We just recently did an initiative with our Parramore Oaks development. Parramore Oaks development is on the south end that will bring on another 200 and so many units. So that's an exciting opportunity. The Community Redevelopment Agency is also building single-family homes, building that structure so that what we're doing is increasing that capacity. And I can tell you, and a lot of people have this kind of negative opinion about Parramore, but when we start building houses, people are blowing our phone up trying to get into this community because they see the wonderful things that's going on in place. So, you know, we have a number of I know city officials that's in this room that's doing a lot of great things, but a lot of that is based on what we're seeing happen today. And as school board member Gordon mentioned, it's the quality that we're putting in place. We're not just putting something up just to put it up. We're putting quality. And when we talk about quality, we're talking about a school that's great. You know, when you go there, you see the academic pieces of it. And how many times, you know, growing up as a kid, you go to one school for almost, 8 grades. So there's some consistency. Now, sometimes it's bad because you have the same teachers kind of in that same environment. And as a kid growing up, I know Dr. Spooner remember this, a lot of the teachers were next door to where you live. And if you were one of them bad guys or bad girls that didn't do your work and you got in trouble, you had to go home. And next door was that teacher. And so you got spanking twice, right, Doc? So it just those types of things that when we're building a community, we're building a whole community, not building a third of a community, because that's the only way it's going to work, by having a whole factor in place going forward. So I would just say that as we go forward, we have some challenges, but we have opportunities to really make this thing go into another level of commitment. We have our Community Redevelopment Agency, what we call our CRA, is doing tremendous things based on the City of Orlando commitment to this community and going forward. So a lot of it is just going to be based on timing, patience, of everybody working together by just having the university systems in our community, Valencia and University of Central Florida. We're bringing students into our community, and these students will become major players in this community. We haven't built it just yet, but it's a great opportunity to do that. How many of our communities have those institutions in there? And we feel good about that connectivity. So I see the great synergy that's going on. We got a number of other initiatives going on that will be great opportunity versus challenges we're trying to get. And you'll hear a little bit more about our pathway, our Parramore district of our Main Street program, that's coming online to do some things to address some of the economic concerns in our community, building that merchant base, because we need a merchant base. As a community, I didn't have to drive out the community for anything. There were stores in there, the churches was there, everything's in the community. So I didn't have to worry about trying to get to Orange Avenue, because they were all down on Church Street, all down on Parramore Avenue. So a lot of these things were in place as a kid, and that's what we're trying to do, make Parramore a community of whole, so that you don't, you be able to walk and feel good about it and get rid of that perception that everything in Parramore is bad. We reduced the number of juvenile delinquency in our community. In fact, it turned over 100%. We've also increased the amount of students graduating from high school, going on to secondary schools and moving forward. So a lot of things are in place, and it's based on, as I mentioned to you earlier, the implementation plan of that Pathways for Parramore initiative.
Thank you, Walter. I'll repeat the question for you, Dr. Singh.
I got it.
Okay.
One of the advantages of being civilian, so to speak, that you can speak truth to power. Statement basically means you speak truth to those who are in power. I say that because I get to make statements. I'm a historian. undergraduate degree was in history. I did teach for a moment, but most of my career was in business. MBA from Nova before it was Southeastern. Nova Southeastern, so that's how long it was. But so I learned some things over the years. So we asked this question about change. What I've always understood is that for change to occur, you got to see what was to what you want to be. You have to look back. And as I look back, when I look at this question, as I look back, there was an acronym that I used to use when I was with Bell South, IDOTS. It depends on the situation. So when we look at change, whether or not the change has been good or bad, depends on the situation. As Walter has alluded to, there were at one time 18 plus thousand people. We're now approximately 5,000. We also understand that the median income in Parramore is about $18,000. The rest of Orlando, the median income, I believe, is around $45,000, $50,000. When I look back, I look at I-4 and 408 and how, as it relates to Parramore, those two major highways actually devastated the Parramore. A lot of people were forced to sell their homes to move out to the west side. That really began the downfall, in addition to, believe it or not, integration in the fact that people could start going to big stores and things of that sort. All right, things have changed. Walter alluded to. I was born on Bentley Street in Parramore. First 6 years of my life, I lived there, but we moved to Washington Shores. So I was raised in Washington Shores. But this is my church that I was raised in, and I came into this area often. As I was growing up, things have changed because the streets are paved. Used to be dirt roads in Parramore. Things have changed because we don't have to go to the back of the bus anymore. All right. I remember this. I remember getting on Orlando Transit and putting my quarter into the little thing. But one time it was 15 cents. Then it went to a quarter. But I remember them making sure that we went to the back of the bus. Schools are open for everybody to attend. When I was growing up, you couldn't go to Boone High. Well, to the latter years of my junior and senior year, but the other time we didn't go to Boone, Edgewater, etc. Things have changed because we can now go to Orlando Health or Advent. Before we couldn't go to those. I was born in a house. My brother was born in Orlando Orange Memorial, but on the basement because that's how it was back then. Things have changed now. I got to admit, we got black policemen, we got black educators in a higher position, positions of responsibility. We got city employees. But on the other hand, all that's good. But we still got homelessness that we got to deal with. We got more of that now than we had before. I don't know if that's got anything to do with Parramore as much as it's a sign of the time. Our economic situation. I've looked and I've seen that this issue is dealt with in every major city in the state of Florida and in the Southeast. Homelessness is an issue. Unemployment is an issue. Housing shortage is an issue. Does it have to do more with the moral integrity of individuals and trying to build, or does it have a lot to do with the economic climate? I don't know. When we look at Parramore, there are more businesses today. Things have changed than there were back in our day in Walter. But the question is, things have changed. There are more brown and beige people owning those businesses than there are black people. So what we have to do is come up and galvanize a plan so that we can get more black ownership. We'll speak to that a little later when we deal with some issues, some questions relative to the entrepreneurism. And so things have changed for the better, but at the same time, it depends on the situation and what area that you're looking at and it relates to that. I think the city of Orlando is doing a great job in trying to infuse growth, etc., into the Parramore area. On the other hand, I think that we need to take a better look at in making it inclusive so that the indigenous, if I can use that word, population does not feel isolated and left out. And I don't know how you can do that other than just continue to communicate over and over and over. So things have changed from the standpoint that there now is communication. more so than it was before. But before you just were told, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, but now you can have some input. Things have changed. I think it's been, if I were to put that on a bar, if you will, and say, okay, good or bad, I think I lean more to the good side. Things have changed for the good, but it's been a slow process, overcoming backward movement that we had as a result of what happened in the 70s after integration, and then businesses failed because of one thing or another. And so, but that's a whole nother issue. But again, that's just me. I'm just a preacher. I don't know.
Terrence, could I just respond just to what Dr. Spooner mentioned? And one of the greatest things that I felt that was important in this community was the leadership of the ministers that was definitely the backbone behind this community for the longest. When there was, the people felt like they didn't have a voice, but the ministers would always be able to go downtown or go to city council meeting, go to the meeting, and be able to stand and speak on behalf of those members that, or those citizens that did not feel comfortable. So, I commend the great leadership that Dr. Spooner has put in place, because he's still part of that kind of association that are coming and being those voices. Because sometimes people feel intimidated by coming down to a structure, that big structure down the city hall or government or whatever. But those ministers, they walk in there with confidence, because they know that they have a membership base that if they need to bring them to come to City Hall, they can do that. So I just, just commend the leadership of, Dr. Spooner and all the other ministers that have been part of this community, because without them, I don't think that we probably would not have made all the gains that we are, and as many of the gains that we've made.
Thank you. And I'll add to that also, as my background is city planning. And so Walter, you mentioned advocacy, Dr. Gordon, you mentioned education, and Reverend Spooner, you mentioned equality and equity. And so with my job, I often try to push for those pillars in the work that I do. And I try to ensure that the projects that are submitted to the city have those qualities in place. I try my best to speak for those that don't have the courage or don't have the abilities to come to City Hall. So with all the projects that I work on, I do my best to try to instill that those principles are in each and every project submitted to the city. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit, and we're going to talk about Dr. Gordon a little bit with her education. Why did you decide to get your doctorate degree at a later period in your life and run as an elected official?
Well, I really didn't decide at a later time. I started in 1970, and Reginald McGill and I don't think I see Reggie in here, but Reginald McGill, well, Reggie and I have a friend that attended Edward Waters College. And when we would go to our church meetings, we said, now, if he get up there one more year and we continue to give him money for the next 50 years, this is not going to work. So we just packed up. Thank you, Reggie, for being here. I started in 1970 on my doctorate, and I started at Florida Tech University. And we were very militant with working with the doctors there. Number one, they didn't even have a degree for counseling. So I was one of the first to finish the counseling program, and they have honored me for that, and I'm so grateful. As one of the top graduates from UCF. I started then, okay? But then the ministers, I gotta go back. When the ministers called, they said, look, we're not where we wanna be in education. We don't have high academic standards. We don't have parent involvement. We don't have any facilities. They're building Dr. Phillips University, Cypress, and we're not getting any schools built. And we don't have any business partners helping us. We need you. And I'm going, oh my God. So all the big ministers, Reverend Toomer, I'm just calling it 910, Reverend Champion, Reverend Judge, those leaders called me and they said, we really need somebody that would fight. Well, of course, I was a fighter because I started at South Carolina State marching. We were in that group that went to jail. for 30 days because Martin Luther King came on our campus and asked us to march. And we won't do that again because we didn't know they were going to put us in jail and the governor wasn't going to let us graduate. But a long story short, we were told from that day forward, get a higher degree. If you're going to help your people get a higher degree, you're here at South Carolina State with a BS. So when I came, we had FTU, and you hear Reverend Pooney talk about NOVA. We had FTU. FTU did not want to get a doctoral program for us at that time. We only had one professor that was fighting for us. So what we did, that professor got Florida Atlantic University to come to FTU and put together a doctoral program, and a group of us got in it. Then the word started spreading on the campus that you're not going to finish. They had acronyms. You're not going to finish from FTU. You're not going to finish, period. And so Dr. Bray was our professor from Florida Atlantic, and she said it was just too much for her coming back and forth in 1970, 71, 72. She said it was just, she had a lot to do down in Boca Raton, and she encouraged us. She said, I'm going to leave you, but I'm going to leave you with this. You have already started your doctoral program on FTU campus under Florida Atlantic University, but you've got to finish. I don't care if you are 65, you got to finish. Well, I was 75 when I finished. And I'm 77 now, going on 78. So that was a task. Once the task has begun, never leave it till it's done. Be the labor great or small, do it well, not at all. And I just wanted to prove to young teachers, I wanted to show my 3 children, don't give me an excuse that you cannot go back and get a degree. I don't care if you're 90 years old, you go back and get your degree. I'm on my son right now. He was in college up in Chicago, and he got married. So the wife's got her doctor. I said, so when are you going to get yours? We fought until we got Reggie, all of us. I fought until I got my other daughter back in college, and now she is the music teacher at Orange Academic Center for Excellence right in Parramore. Having fun teaching those children there. Who would have ever thought that my child would be one of them that would come back and be a teacher and working with Dr. Spooney and working with Walter at a school that God gave me a dream and a vision because Mr. Blocker asked me what did I want to do as my main goal. So my journey, I had to finish it because Dr. Gray gave me the wisdom back then to go ahead and finish. And you know what? I made it a priority. And know what made it easy? When my pastor put me off the trustee board. Because I was doing something for everybody else. And he said, well, you ain't kind of coming to, you're not on the prayer line, read your scripture. I said, well, I got Reggie reading it, the Vita reading it for me. You know, Russell reading the scripture for me. He said, no, I'm gonna kind of move you. And then Reverend Barnes told him, please don't move, Cat. No, Cat ain't following my plan. So I thanked him. I said, oh God, thank you. I'll go back and get my doctorate. That's when I decided. When I was kicked off the trustee board at St. Mark, I decided that I would go back and complete a task for myself. And that's what I tell young people today. Complete a task for yourself. And that was my task. And I'm so happy. And then they said, well, you're going to retire. I sure did. I retired a year later out of Osceola County after working 26 years there and 25 as a teacher in Orange. In 1 year, I went back to my high school and helped to build that library there. So those were all my goals. And Reggie, I'll tell you, I'm living my dream. I didn't desire anything else. I just desired to teach. That's what I do. I'm just a master teacher and a mentor for others to encourage them. So really, what made me go back? Dr. Gray.
Thank you.
And Pastor Gray.
I would say you're certainly a living legend and definitely an inspiration to everyone.
Thank you.
Dr. Spooney, as a former president of the African American Chamber, what improvements or changes have you seen in Black entrepreneurs?
I guess a better question for that might be, how did desegregation affect Black business? I'm going to answer that question from, not from a theological or preaching standpoint, but from a historical standpoint. Look back and look at desegregation and how it affected. I've actually done some studies looking at communities like Birmingham, Alabama, Georgia, some other cities that were in the throes, if you will, of desegregation and at the forefront at the vanguard of the civil rights movement. One of the things that happened after segregation ended, we found that many African Americans began to flock to support businesses that were owned by white people. We couldn't go to those businesses before. Now we had a chance to do and spend the money there. Started going to restaurants, theaters, banks, etc. And as a result, in the black community, those same entities began to disappear. Restaurants, theaters, banks, etc. Today, approximately 95% of the income of African Americans is spent right on business. Segregation laws, if you will, were wiped out. And before blacks were welcomed into white businesses, because I say that because I'm old enough to remember when I couldn't go to, had to go to a certain portion of the store in Sears and Woolworth. Y'all don't remember Woolworth. that's how far back I go and things of that sort. I can remember that. I remember we had to go down into the basement. So once we had an opportunity to go to those stores, my parents, there was nothing better than going to I can't think of Big Coins. We're going to Big Coins. It's like going out on a weekend drive or whatever, because we couldn't go there before. But on the other hand, that affected African American business. So today, what we got in Parramore, as a result of that, really is we got a lot of storefronts that are abandoned and clear lots and boarded up buildings, etc. Okay, and so what can we do? Okay, understanding that desegregation worked out socially great, economically not so good. What we're doing today, the change that we have today, I think are changes that are unilaterally being made across America, where people are trying to revitalize communities that were affected in this case, our community. That's why we have African American Chamber of Commerce, things of that sort, which are geared to help businesses thrive and grow. That's why we have Main Street entities. It's just not in Orlando that we have Main Street, but it's all over America. And the whole process is really to galvanize community businesses to grow. The thing we have to do is, we got a generation, we missed a generation. Now we got a generation of young entrepreneurs that are coming up. What we have to do as leaders is get them in the position so that they can be successful. I think this new generation is coming forward. And wherefore, to want to continue to move forward, they just need the resources. It does not need to be a handout, okay? But it needs to be something that's going to help them overcome whatever barriers we have to deal with. Not rambling, but one of the things we're going to have to deal with is this issue of capital for young entrepreneurs so that they can be established, things of that sort. So when you say what kind of change, there are opportunities that exist. It's a slow grind, if you will. Statistics will tell us most black businesses fail. 22% of startup white companies fail. 26% of startup black companies fail. That's close. Okay. So what's the difference? I think the difference is somebody having a mindset that they want to put their shoulder to the plow and having the resources to do it. And I think those resources are available, not coming from the government. I think those resources need to come from from industry, if you will, from banking. No handout, but we need to be trained so that we can write business plans, so that we can be able to understand those nuances involved in being successful, using established business models to manage our companies. I mean, I had no idea what return on assets managed was and how important that is to a business until I went to school, business school, and found that out. Some things don't come by nature. We need to be taught. That's why that's why it's important from an education standpoint. So there's been some change. There's been opportunities. We're moving slow. I think, but in Parramore, I think we're doing okay in the Parramore area with businesses. Now we just need to be able to make sure that from a standpoint of the residents of Parramore, they have a chance to participate. And by that I mean they need to want to also establish a business. And our young people need to be motivated to come back to the community. That's why it's important for us to have good housing in Parramore, as well as alluded to. These are the things, the infrastructure that's going to be in place, going to bring the business, the individuals to live when they're going to have their businesses centered around the areas in which they live. So things are really getting better. As I mentioned before, if I had to put it on scale and say good or bad, there's been some, I think the positive changes certainly outweigh the negative downturn, if you will. If we've overcome what we lost, we're not gaining it back. But the mindset's got to come from the individual. You've got to be able to want to be successful. You got to want to do it, not from a handout, but want to work at it and put your shoulder to the plow. Nothing comes easy. Nothing happens until something happens. You got to do something. But I think we got a generation of young people today, even though they are microwave motivated, they want everything now, so to speak, but they still have to decide to give it all they got.
Thank you for that. I'm going to switch it over to Walter. Can you please describe the changes you have seen in housing and how housing improves other pathways? You mentioned earlier about the housing with the CRA, and you also mentioned quality.
Well, just going back to, again, as I mentioned to you, we're trying to build a population base in the community, because that's the only way it's going to be successful in building that. You got to have the right infrastructure, right product. And what we've done is focus on from a community redevelopment agency. And I just want to mention that the community redevelopment agency was set up to address slum and blight in our community. So people understand what that means of how you can improve the infrastructure, and housing is one of those, and putting the quality of housing. The city has put together a number of housing initiatives, not just from the community redevelopment agency, but also our housing department, because there are funds available to increase the apartments, to increase the single family home, to look at townhomes, look at all those housing options that many other communities have. And we, from a community redevelopment agency, have pushed towards that, having those improvements. From a housing standpoint, it is crucial. It is very crucial, but you don't want to have individuals go into a community where you still, I don't know if you guys remember what shotgun houses are. Shotgun houses are not the answer. They're only going to last for a short period of time. You need to be able to have 2 and 3 bedroom houses that have more than one bathroom. Having 2 or 3 bathrooms and have a nice driveway, as Dr. Spooner mentioned, being able to have, paved roads, not have dirt roads you got to travel. But we have to have those things that other communities have benefited from, and that's what we want to be about, is having that to come forward in our community. And, I can tell you that we've had great leadership by Mayor Dyer. We've had great leadership by former Commissioner Daisy Lynham, Nat Forward. You can just go down the list, but each one of those individuals have got in place, and they have made their commitment to improving. And I know the first thing they want to focus on is housing. because many of them lived in those housing situations. I grew up at the corner of Hicks and South Street, lived in an apartment, and I had 3 brothers. We had 1 bathroom, and it was 13 units in there. And, at the time, the rent was probably about $300 a month, about a month. So you can't even find that. And now you have people challenged with it today because these rates are crazy. Even being in a shotgun house now, that's over $1,000 a month you paying, where the incomes are not matching up to what these people are. So we have to look at what's realistic. The Community Redevelopment Agency has put funding in there to support some housing. I can tell you guys, I'm gonna go on record with this. I think most of the city staff, we built houses in Parramore for as much as $300,000 for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath housing situation. But we put funds in there to help offset some of the costs because we have down payment assistance, we have some support. So persons that used to live in a, really a bad situation, now they have a pleasant situation because they only give, their only commitment, a loan on that home is now cut in half. So that's why I'm saying people are beating our door now to come in because where can you go and you get a $300,000 house, brand spanking new. You're the first one to live there, and your monthly payment may be $1,200 or $1,300 a month. We were killed for those kinds of arrangements, and we're on the board to build 12 other houses in our community, to build more housing in the community. But it's not about that. I think some people feel like we're trying to kick people out of the neighborhood. We're trying to get people to come back to the neighborhood, be a part of that. That's the goal of it, is to have a community. And communities cannot be built just on poor folks. We got to have a balance. That's why you have market rate as well as affordable housing to make sure it works. If you think you're just going to have just a certain income level in there, you're not going to be successful. We're not going to get the Publix. We're not going to get those things. And as Dr. Spooner mentioned, we're trying to help those businesses to come into our neighborhood, but they got to have the people that can come spend the money. And I would just encourage you all, we have on West Church Street, we got some businesses that are looking for some customers. So you guys on your today, make a commitment once a week to go and visit one of those merchants alone there. To me is a great start. I'm having a hair. I used to go to J. Henry to get my hair cut, but I'm just saying those are things, or women go to the salons and you go somewhere. Those are the things that we need to be encouraging. How do we do that? I remember Mr. Jonathan Sablant, he pulled together many years ago, had over 300 businesses that was coming together because there was a commitment to say, we're going to make an economic difference in this community because we want to have our merchants together, but we got to have our business community, as Dr. Spooner mentioned, they got to utilize the resources, got to go and get the training, get the education to run a business. I can't run a business. I can't run out of shoebox, but there's some things that we got to go and be educated about because in order to be successful, you got to have those right pieces, the right things in place to be successful. If not, you're going to be just like the other ones. You put your last dollar into this, and now you're trying to find some income. You're trying to find a job, you lose your house. We're not trying to do that. We're trying to say, let's base it on the fact you open up a business, the city of Orlando, through our Community Redevelopment Agency, we have funding to help support the entrepreneur that wants to improve their situation. We got incentive programs that's in place to help people be successful. But again, like you all are here to this morning, I want you all to spread the word because we can't do it alone. It's going to take all of us, and that's what we call this village. In a village, it takes everybody to come together to make a difference, to show their support, and not just throw a rock at something and say how things are bad. Let's look at what things are good, what things are challenging, what things are opportunities. So I would just encourage us to kind of look at that, you know, as we, and I'm gonna kind of slip a little bit talking about the Main Street program, because I think you had a question
Yes,
about that.
you read my mind.
So, you know, recently, the city of Orlando just went forward with the initiative. Main Street has been around in Orlando for 10+ years, I believe. I don't know what number it is, but it's a national effort. But in Parramore recently, we have moved forward the last 2 years or 3 years of initiating the Main Street program. Started out in the what we call the city district, a downtown Church Street area. Now it's coming into the Parramore area. That is to look at our central core, our main, as they always call it. For right now, a lot of focus would be along Church Street, along Parramore Avenue, because you don't want to try to take the thing as a whole. You know, you're not successful when you're trying to patch everything up, you're trying to fix it. So we want to focus our attention. That is to encourage businesses to get the training necessary to help market them, to improve the infrastructure, to support those, what I call broken chief situation, because we got a lot of spaces in Parramore. If you guys have some money out there, you want to come and redevelop the Parramore, there's some land out there. We need to fill those little gaps up with some businesses. So now it becomes a whole factor. It becomes a whole progress moving forward. Again, Community Redevelopment Agency, we have the support to do it, as well as the city. So pass the word on, let people know that we have the infrastructure, we have some things in place, but we got to take advantage of it. And we don't need to just kind of go every year and say, well, we got a pot of money, and then the pot of money is never used. We need to have people come and use that pot of money so we can be successful and have things going on, so that Parramore gets rid of that perception of a bad community. It becomes a whole community. It becomes a community that will, again, provide understanding of what the goals are, from great schools, from great housing, from great businesses, from great infrastructure. And that's what we're trying to achieve from all of this going forward.
Thank you. I'm going to switch gears a little bit. I'm sure everyone is familiar with the coronavirus and the pandemic that's plagued the world. So I'm going to bring this question to Dr. Gordon. How has the pandemic affected education?
Well, number one, I want to just say this because it has really not been said. I felt that the mayor of Orlando and the mayor of Orange County, Mayor Buddy Dyer and Mayor Jerry Dimmons, leadership was doing an excellent job for Orange County and the various municipalities, even though I didn't see all of the mayors, the other mayors, because I had the opportunity to work with all of the mayors. I mean, we have 13 municipalities and unincorporated Orange, and Orange County Public Schools encompasses every one of them. And we have built schools in every community except the community where I am now. And we were in the process of building that school, and the pandemic kind of slowed us up. And the mayor, our mayor passed away. I think you all know who I'm talking about without, calling the name, but he really wanted that school because every school, every municipality has a school, except this particular municipality. And the leadership of Buddy Dyer and Jerry Dimmons was outstanding during the pandemic. I just don't know what happened with our governor. Yeah, you can, we can give that a hand. Okay, because we were headed in the right direction. They gave respect to the education system. They got together, they talked. We did nothing without them. We did nothing without them. All of the leaders got together and we said what we were going to do as far as the children and how we were going to master it. It just wasn't chaos. It wasn't chaos. I was still teaching in Osceola County during that time, and we were going to work. And we were making it happen. And yes, teachers were getting COVID and the media would keep it quiet. The governor would keep it quiet. Teachers died in my school. They would keep it quiet. But I love what Mayor Demings did for education, working side by side with Dr. Barbara Jenkins. We were rolling it. We followed leadership. The education system, yes, we said, okay, we're gonna go this way, we're gonna go that way, we're gonna get everybody masked up, we're going to do whatever was asked of us from the federal government. Then some people got angry and it disrupted the entire education system. We as educators didn't know where we were going. Wear masks, don't wear masks. Buy all the PPE stuff, separate the tables, come to work, don't come to work. We were totally confused as to, but yet we still try to stay the course. And the more we stayed the course with Mayor Buddy Dyer and Mayor Jerry Demings, we were going up the ladder and coming down, and we were moving in to teaching our children. I don't care if it was electronic. These children are electronic kids, whether you all know it or not. And they were going to mass. Then everybody, oh, my child not learning nothing. Oh yeah, you were learning. If you came to school, you were learning. We never stopped teaching. I know I never did. Okay, we taught whoever came to school. Then it was don't send your kids, send your kids. So the leadership at the top of the state just tore up our education system. They couldn't get along with the unions. They didn't want to talk to the union. And then when I found out that our governor didn't even want to talk to our mayor, yet alone talk to our county mayor, it did something to me. Because I began to wonder what is more important. His relationship building with whoever he was building it with, or was his relationship with the 13 municipalities here in Orange County and the 67 counties throughout Florida that was having problems. It troubled me, it bothered me. So you asked me, how did the pandemic affect education? Under the dynamic leaderships that we have now, we are praying that they would still not pass down these tough laws about grading the school this way, grading the school that way, when they did absolutely nothing to assist us. We kept forward, we kept teaching, we taught the curriculum the best way we know how, then we taught all summer long and had to walk back in August and start teaching all over again under rules that were discombobulated rules. So that's what the pandemic did to education. But are we going to get it together? You're darn right we are. Because that's what we were made to do. We were made to teach kids in the bathroom. I remember when I started at Orange Center, I didn't have a room. I taught under the tree. At Orange Center Elementary, where the Boys and Girls Club sit right now, Mr. Johnson said, yo, we're so overcrowded. We had over 1,000 children. There were 1,000 kids at Eccleston, 1,000 kids at Orange Center, 1,000 kids at Richmond Heights. It was just children everywhere back in the 60s. And we didn't have the space, but we taught because we had Black leaders and good administrators that wanted us to teach our Black children. Because the white kids never will get it anyhow. You know that. They had parents that were guided, but we didn't always have all that. So that question, how does the pandemic, how has it affected education? It affected us. It stopped us, but that's what teaching is all about. We will get back on that horse and we will ride it until those children graduate.
Thank you, Doctor. And I applaud you and those administrators for that schooling and the effectiveness. I'm going to ask you, Reverend Spooning, how has the pandemic affected the faith-based senior day?
Before I answer that question, if I may, Mr. Moderator, I'd like to kind of go back to comments that we had on Main Street, the Main Street concept, if I may.
Absolutely.
It's just on my mind. As I look at this Main Street entity and this concept, what I see actually is an opportunity for, this is a prime opportunity for this community to see total inclusion. When I say this community, I'm speaking of Parramore. Since I was around as president of the Chamber of Commerce at that time, when the Black Chamber of Commerce, when first Main Street, Church Street, Main Street was in operation. So the success from that standpoint, it died out. But now that we are in a rebirth, there's an opportunity for this community to see that the city and the leadership is really putting their money where their mouth is when it comes to not only business, but also inclusion. And I say that because Main Streets are public, private, they finance, have boards of directors, things of that sort. It would be great to see, board of directors for Main Street that would be indicative of the population of residents of this community. I don't know what it looks like at this point in time. And if it looks like that, then that's good. That means you're putting your money where your mouth is. But if it doesn't, I think that you can get ahead of the curve, if you will, if you were able to get more participation, even from the residents who don't have business, because now you can put them in the business mind so that they can maybe want to become business oriented. So I think there needs to be some type of molding or coming together, if you will, of the Main Street entity and whatever other entities that you might have in the city of Orlando from that standpoint. Just a thought. I also got some thoughts on housing and as it relates to housing trust and things of that sort. But we're not talking about that right now.
Just a preacher.
I'm just a preacher. We'll cover that next time. We'll cover that next time. But as it relates to the pandemic, man, I look at the pandemic, and the pandemic affected the church. It affected the church, and it's also, it actually affected the congregants' health. But from a church standpoint, the mental health is what I'm talking about. Because being sequestered or locked away, you can see that how individuals are, even in our country, how this separation has caused, this isolation has caused some serious mental problems. And so we see that in the church a lot. It's affected church attendance quite naturally. We've had to become more creative in methods of getting the gospel out. Certainly the pandemic created fear, but it also caused individuals to check their Christian growth from that standpoint, to make sure that that they really walk by faith and not by sight, and not allow everything to worry them. The Bible tells us, now y'all in church, so I'm gonna say this. Be in church, right? Church is our pastor, as a matter of fact, but God has not given us a spirit of fear. And as a result, we can't deal with situations. So individuals have to go and reevaluate their actual stance as it relates to a Christian walk. But more importantly, not more importantly, but in addition to that, the pandemic also pushed technology to the forefront of the small and medium-sized church. Major churches had all of that stuff. My church, and I say we're a small church, my congregation is 385 members. And we had a screen, we had a projector, and some other entities. I'm not in the microphone. Okay. Thank you. My technical guy telling me I'm talking too soft. So let me talk in my preacher voice. But so we changed. So technology now has come into the play as far as getting the gospel out, and so it kind of forced many small and medium-sized churches to upgrade their technology. In my church, we utilize Zoom, and we utilize Facebook, and we utilize YouTube. We weren't using any of those before. All we were doing, we had a screen up so everybody could see what was going on in the church, but we weren't broadcasting. We now even have a free conference, a conference freeconference.com line for those senior members who don't have the wherewithal to understand computer technology. Well, we put the phone up, put it on speakerphone, and they can hear the service, and they're just as happy. They just as excited. It's almost like they're in service. And so that's what it's done for us. It's shown things have changed, but we got to understand, as I tell my congregation, we have to understand that what we're going through, God knows what we're going through as well. And so we also have to sit back and not get in front of God, even with our technology. We still need to do what He wants us to do. I believe that the word was to get out, for the word to get out across the world, because the Bible says that's got to happen. This technology now, the word of God is being exposed to individuals who didn't have an opportunity to hear it before. And so from my standpoint, the pandemic, once again, when you look at it negative and positive, I would say it's kind of equal. I won't say it's been good, all right? Because people have been sick, and people have passed on, and people have been called home to be with the Lord. But on the other hand, we've been in a position where now we're more outside. We're doing more work. We're becoming more visible. We were doing things in my church wherein we were feeding the hungry and clothing those who needed clothes. That was just ministry. But now we're doing it, and because of our exposure on all of this technology, people know what we're doing. And they're not saying, what's the church doing? They know that every Saturday we out there feeding some folk, or we're doing whatever needs to be done in this time. So the pandemic has had a negative effect, but it also has some positive has come out of it as well. And we just need to hold on, keep on keeping on, and continue to look to the Lord and trust God to lead us to be a vibrant community of believers who are alive with God's spirit and worship, life, and ministry. Now y'all think I just made that up, but that's on that wall. I'm just reading it. Okay.
Well done. Thank you, Pastor. So what I would like to do now is open the floor up to questions and answers. If we have someone with the microphone that could. Yes.
Thank you all so much for your very cogent and insightful dialogue. Dr. Spooner, you said something that really stirred me. With respect to, and because we are from that same age group where we went to the segregated.
No, you're older than me.
Segregated stores and businesses. And you said that basically what happened is that we were overrun by and large by the white entities that we couldn't go to before. And certainly that's true. But the thing that really bothers me is I look over here in Creative Village and I see 8,000 new people that have come in. I see all kinds of new businesses in Creative Village, but I don't see any of them owned by Black people. I look around in our Black communities, whether it's Pine Hills or Holden Heights or Parramore, and those businesses in our community are not owned by white people. They're owned by foreigners who, many of whom speak very little English. They employ none of our people, and they treat us as if we are pariahs. They disdain us. We are totally and completely disrespected by them. And what bothers me is that our ancestors, they didn't have all of the great tools that we have now to help to advantage Black business people, but they went into business anyway. So when they built, Omaha, and when they built, our great Black communities, they built it from the grit. They built it from the desire. They built it from the heart of wanting to serve our community. And we built magnificent communities. When I grew up, I went to Mr. Barber's grocery store and Hershey's Bar and Grill, and the funeral homes that were on my street and all of this. And Black businesses really, really flourished in our community when we grew up. And what I don't understand right now is why is it that our Black community is not stepping forward and taking the initiative to build our businesses in our community? These entities, these open tooth gaps that you talk about, why aren't we moving into those open tooth gaps? Why are we building and buying houses in our communities? Why are we building on all these dilapidated and rundown houses and vacant lots in our communities? Why don't we take the initiative and do it ourselves? Elijah Muhammad said, do for self. Why is it that we are not doing for self?
Was that directed toward me?
Well,
Because I can't answer that question as to why we're not, why individuals choose not to be entrepreneurs. It's a choice, you know. I tell people, here's what I tell my church. If you can choose between Pepsi and Coke, McDonald's and Burger King, Wendy's and KFC, then you can make a decision in your life to choose to do what's right. So the same would apply from a business standpoint. I wrestled as president of the African American Chamber. And listen, it's been 10 years since I was president of the Chamber of Commerce. By the way, the African American Chamber of Commerce, under the leadership of Dr. Gary, non-Gary, this chamber is way better than what it was doing when I was president. And one of the things that businesses need to do is hook up with chambers, because the purpose of a chamber is so that there can be commerce between business owners who are not only part of that chamber, but also of the chamber chain, if you will. And so I would recommend to anyone, if you really want to do business with the Black community as a whole, you join the African American Chamber of Commerce. But when I was president of the chamber, I wrestled with the fact that many young entrepreneurs did not want to take the risk, were afraid to step out and do what was necessary to be successful. That's why I alluded to, and I don't know if you were here when I said that there is a generation of young entrepreneurs that are developing now that will do many of what you, in my opinion, that will do much of what you were saying. Okay, they have the wherefore, they have the knowledge, they have the skill set to gain and garner their own resources and own finances to get things done. We don't need to depend on, I say we business people don't need to depend on the government, if you will. But if we know business, we'll know how to write business plans, we'll know how to get financing together. And by the way, I thought it was at least two minority-owned businesses over in Creative Village. I thought it was two. I thought it was a finance person over there who owned the business and somebody else. But what we have to do is let people know that there's space available. You know, you want to start a business or you want to move your business, the opportunity is there. You just got to want to do it. Like what you did when you started Essence, you wanted to do that. You made that choice. When you were one of the founders of that, as I recall, if I'm correct. Prime founder, okay. But nobody twisted your arm, did they? You did that because that's what you were there to do.
No, and there were no resources available at that time.
And you got them.
We just stepped out on faith and raised $2 million and built it up.
I failed to mention, for the individuals that are asking questions, you get a free gift. So are there any more questions available?
Oh, the hands go.
There's one hand in the back.
There's one in the back.
I'm not asking questions because of the gift. I'm Morgan Lee, and I'm recently elected president of Parramore Main Street District, and I wanted to confirm to you, Dr. Spooney, that the board of directors is indicative of the Parramore community. One of the questions that I had, and this is really to all of the panelists, pulling not only your experience in the community, but your own personal background. One of the things one of the other ways I also serve the community, I sit on the Affordable Housing Committee for the City of Orlando. And one of the issues that is the most prevalent or more prevalent in Orlando than any other city in the United States is affordable housing. The percentage of income burdened households is about almost 10% higher than the national average here in Orlando. And speaking
What is the income burden?
meaning you own a house, but you're barely able to afford it. So Orlando is 10% higher than the national average. One of the issues that we have started to tackle on the affordable housing committee that I think definitely affects Parramore, Black communities like Parramore more, is that missing middle of housing and the smaller developments, like the 12 units or less. What do you think the city could do, or organizations that do raise money to give housing assistance? What do you think could be done to provide incentives for those smaller developers to actually develop in communities like Parramore, not only just housing, but affordable housing? Because that seems to be an issue that Orlando does not have enough, or at least good enough incentives for that smaller developer.
Sometimes that's a challenge with trying to provide those opportunities, but I would say that just through City of Orlando Housing Division or Department, it's just sometimes having conversations about what's available and bring it to the attention of the elected officials so they can start addressing it. Even with the CRA, with Community Redevelopment Agency, it wasn't until it started to become an issue where we start to kind of talk about it and then start to allocate funding based on the needs out there. And that's why we need community input like yourself and others to talk about ways to help us so that we can start making sure that we seek funding, not just from the city standpoint, but maybe the state and federal, because they are federal funding. And the housing department gets a lot of federal dollars. But specifically, sometimes is how do the information get out to the public? And that's always a challenge. And we were talking about the pandemic, it's made it worse because we're not in the communities having these kind of gatherings to talk about these kind of programs. But I would just say, as you're taking that initiative, start to talk with others about it, making sure that on the Affordable Housing Council, that is discussed, and looking at how can we lift some of the more advancement of dollars versus limited, because I think sometimes we at 40,000, maybe we need to go a little higher, maybe, but we have to have that information that will be supportive of us making those advancements. Again, like I said, the Community Redevelopment Agency is set up to deal with slum and blight. And those folks don't own those. Then you have people come in, and this is just a sad situation, come in and buy everything up and they sit on it. And it just becomes a nightmare to try to get people in there. So they're at the mercy of whoever bought that land. And then first time situation, when they can't afford it, then they get kicked out. Where do they go? Those are some of the things that we need to have open forums about, and they particular into our African-American community. And then it's a struggle. And that's why I say going to pastors so that, pastor can speak his mind, he can talk about these things because he's only a preacher. But, those types of things that bring it to the attention of elected officials, and it can't just all be about public dollar, it has to be on the private side too. But sometimes private is like all about making money. And so when they're kind of thinking that way, but we do have some programs. So I would love to and I know you already know some of the programs, but we need to be spreading the word about how we can incentivize some of the developers or some of those people that are interested in doing something. We would love to see it. The CRA would love it because we don't want to 100% come out of our coffers because we want to spread the wealth around of supporting others. But if we can have a private public partnership, that's the best thing that can happen.
Can I make a comment, if I may? You mentioned
Questions to the entire panel.
okay, that term, what was that term you used where people were hardly able to afford
Income burden,
income burden?
yes.
Burden.
Oh,
And that's
yeah,
the industry term.
that's yeah, right, exactly. I had not heard that term, but I can tell you this, just it hit me just as plain as day. Well, one of the reasons individuals get in that situation in Central Florida, where it's 10% higher in Orlando, is the fact that our pay is less. Okay, to me, that's, you know, that's a prime reason. Our pay scale and the type of jobs many individuals have, because of the fact that this city is a tourist industry type city. Many of the jobs are low paying in certain areas, okay? And so individuals, if they're employed, but even with minimum wage, it still would put them in a position where they would still be in jeopardy. I mean, that just came across my mind when you made that statement. That may be the answer to that. You know, we need to take a look at it, which means then that now we start talking about now what business people are in business. What are you in business for? You're in business. It all depends. I did a paper one time and I said, oh, I'm in the business to be solvent. If I can pay for everything, I ain't necessarily got to make a profit. Okay. If I got all of my expenses and everything in the envelope, okay, making a profit is good. Today we got so many people that are so profit oriented, they want to make so much money that they tend to exclude the lower people, because I'm about making 22% as opposed to 15% return on my investment. And so it depends on the heart of the individual as to what they want to do. That's one of the reasons. When the Commissioner Hill was first elected on the first term, we met in my office. And I said, and I say just what I always say, I'm just a preacher. But I think that in the equation of houses, you got land, the cost of land, then you got the labor to build a house, the material cost to build a house, et cetera, and it comes out on the end, a profit margin. I said, if the land piece was eliminated, then the profit margin could change, and you could have you could still make your profit margin, but have a lower price house. Just simple stuff. And I say, and I'm saying that because we got all these vacant lots in the city of Orlando. What y'all gonna do with them? Well, they're doing it now. Okay. And I don't know how the city is going about doing all of that. I don't know all the nuances, and I'm not taking credit. I just had a conversation. And I know I could validate, because I still got the PowerPoint on my computer that we went through. Because I mean, it was just an equation. I said, if we eliminate this, could we get a house built and somebody could get in it at a lesser rate? And the cities come up with ways to make that happen. And so I guess what we have to do is work together, but they also have to let people know what's available from that standpoint. I don't work for the city. I don't work for the city. And I'm not pushing anything they're doing, but I think that they got some programs that might help. But on the other hand, now, I am not one to say we need to go to the government about, the private enterprise. Well, let's go sell some developers on coming to Parramore to do some things. Let's get the Chamber of Commerce, the big chamber and the African American Chamber, and let's go lobby some people to come in and say, here's what we want to do. Y'all bring some money. Let's go and give them some needs, some wants and desires, some simple sales stuff, and see if we can sell something.
It's a great question, Morgan. And
I wanted to add to her question, because we don't want to miss the boat here. We don't want to miss the boat. If we do all of that, if those tenants and those homeowners are not educated, it's not going to last. Think about what we are going through now. How many of you are in your own home? Just, you don't have to just, if you're in your own home, okay, you know what we're going through right now. We're going through escrows are gone. Why your escrows are gone? You use a terminology I never heard of before. And I'm educated, okay?
It's a learning curve.
That's what I'm trying to tell you. If your homeowners, future homeowners, potential renters are not educated, tax and insurance is there, your structural upkeep is there, depending on what neighborhood if you are not educating people about home ownership, it's not going to happen. And if it happens, they're not going to keep it up. That's why people created HOAs, so they could make you keep it up. Isn't that sad? And in some communities, if the HOA didn't make you keep it up, and certain people move in, I'm saying certain, any nationality, and they're not keeping it up, what did that HOA do? People go inform things. Most of us are not even informed about stuff like this. But the hardest part is nothing stays the same. Even if they got that house from Walter right now today, or somebody come in and give them a bag of money to get it, how are they going to keep it? Because my mortgage just went up. My insurance just went up. My taxes just went up. And if you're not integrating and teaching my Parramore school parents, that's why I love Mr. Rosen. Because at least he started the Tangelo Project in educating our parents, getting them a degree, getting them whatever they were meant for to take. He was sending them to technical school. Wherever they want to go is where he invested his money. And he was trying to get the other business projects to do it, and very few have done it. He went to the NBA. He went to the National Basketball and Football League, NFL. He went to Oprah and got an award. But did he get any money? No. So what I'm saying is you need a person like a Rosen, like a Harris Rosen, who would take their money and want to educate the people. You need mayors in all these 13 municipalities that want to improve their community, not just the Parramore area. Our children are everywhere. They are our future. And if we're not teaching our children how to invest in homeownership or even invest in rental property, it's going to be very difficult. You just can't get a house and think you ain't gonna pay no taxes. And you're not gonna have insurance, and God forbid the upkeep. So all of that goes into a package. Somebody taught us. Now, who are we going to teach?
So those are all really great questions. I know you're loaded with more. I have to wrap things up. But if you guys can stay afterwards, I'm sure the panelists will be available to speak. One more question.
No, that lady.
One more. I think the young lady right here, Bruce. The young lady right here.
Thank you.
She was first. The lady over
Right
here
here.
was first. Okay, she had her hand up from the very beginning.
I did, and then my question was directed to you, Dr. Cooper.
That baby, I bet.
I was baptized in this church, born and raised on Robinson, lived on Grove, different places, Conley. I'm Parramore character. I'm an attorney. I've been an attorney for over 25 years. My question though was directed to Dr. Ford, when you were talking and you talked about Mayor Dennings, you talked about Mayor Dyer, and the governor not coming
And working with us.
and working with you all. And you mentioned all of that. Did he work with Dr. Jenkins?
No, I just told you he didn't work with the unions or the superintendent or anybody. He's penalizing the school system, taking the money away.
That was my question.
But he didn't start out like that.
Well, I thought, well, at least he had to have spoken to Dr. Jenkins.
No, ma'am, no, ma'am. There was no line of communication there when I was on the board. Okay. And he's taking money from us right now. They're trying to figure out how they're going to do it.
For the sake of time, I did have a presentation to show, but I'm not going to show that right now. But it did highlight things that the panelists spoke about today with the ACE school with Dr. Gordon, the homes, the Parramore Oaks, the CRA homes that Walter mentioned. And so if you guys, we can also share that information on the DDD website, but I do want to give a round of applause to our panelists today. Thank you, Reverend Spooney. Thank you, Dr. Gordon, and thank you, Mr. Hawkins, for your commitment and your leadership in the community. I also want to introduce, I don't know if Jennifer is in the audience today, but there she is. So Jennifer Campbell, she's creative director, designer, and copywriter at Dancing Fish Design. She's helping us put together a walking tour for the Parramore district. And if anyone could help assist her with knowledge, or if you know of anything that has taken place in Parramore, Please get with her, meet with her afterwards. And thank you everyone for your time today. Have a great day.
Thank you, Terrence.
Good job, yo.
Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know how you really know, something gets me, and obviously I'm just like, well,
Right.
just